FM NewsTalk
97.1.
You're listening to The Mark Cox Show. Follow the show on Facebook. Facebook.com/The Mark Cox Show.
But then if you go further and you unmask and you show it to people who don't have clearances or don't have a need to know, you've, for whatever reason, political or whatever, you've done a very bad and dangerous thing from the point of view of classified information in the country.
That's James Woolsey, former CIA director, talking about the unmasking controversy and who might have done it. One of the stories that came out today is that among the subpoenas issued by the House committee is one for Samantha Powers, who was the UN ambassador. And the question that was being asked was that she is not in the intel community. Why would she have needed access to names that might have been unmasked? And that'll be a question I'm assuming they'll ask her under oath. I'm just guessing. Congresswoman Ann Wagner joining us here in the studio. And about these investigations, I mentioned to you in the break that I'm a little surprised there's not been more focus on these leaks and this unmasking. It all seems to have been overshadowed by this image of Russia somehow having a hand in our elections.
Well, I think you're right, and I think that will perhaps in the days to come, through both the Senate Intel Committee and the House Intel Committee, be the story that comes out of this. I have to tell you, in the meetings and the briefings that I've been in, now I don't serve on Intel, but I do serve on Foreign Affairs. No one has produced any indication that Russia had somehow openly influenced our elections, beyond just putting out information, which quite frankly, I think all countries do. Till someone proves to me that they went in and messed with a voting box, I'm going to have a hard time believing any of this. But unmasking and revealing classified sources like that, whether it's coming from the UN, the Obama administration, any administration, is absolutely wrong. And that may end up being the story at the end of the day, which really, Mark, is just, I think, the far left and certainly some of these media outlets' excuse for why Hillary Clinton lost the election. And I think people are sick of it. I'm tired of watching it. I can tell you, as a member of Congress who's actually legislating and getting things done, I'm tired of this taking up the oxygen. The American people need to know what we're doing on their behalf. 103 different bills that we've passed in the House, 30 signed into law. The CRAs, 14 that the president has signed that are law, also overturning many of the overburdensome regulations of the Obama administration. The work that's been done on the court, not just Justice Gorsuch, but others that will be coming up through the federal bench, the executive orders that have been signed. There's a lot that we're getting done, and much more so, frankly, in the Trump administration's first 100 days than any of the previous 4 presidents, going back to George Herbert Walker Bush, to be honest. So those are the things that I think the American public wants to hear about. I think they're tired of, and I agree with the president, this witch hunt dealing with Russia.
I still, my favorite meme from the first 100 days was that Donald Trump's greatest accomplishment in the first 100 days is that it wasn't Hillary Clinton's first 100 days. I can't help myself. Even yesterday, she's blaming the Russians and claims that there must have been collusion because the Russians wouldn't have known how to apply the information for the most damage domestically without somebody here guiding their hand. She said that as part of a TED Talk yesterday. It's amazing to me that she's still out there trying to make excuses for this.
It's pathetic. And she even went after her own party and accusing the Democrat National Committee for lousy data and for ground troops and that they were bankrupt when she took over. It's typical Clinton-esque. I mean, they just take no personal responsibility whatsoever. I think if she wants to know why she lost this last election, she needs to come out here to the heartland. That's where she needs to come.
Right.
And then she'd know real fast why it is that Donald Trump is president of the United States.
Let's talk real quick about priorities for the next 6 or 7 months. The budget's been rolled out by the White House. We know it's going to look very different when it gets to Congress. You'll basically write your own. But I think he set some guidelines that we haven't seen in my recent memory. I mean, how long's it been since somebody talked about cutting projected increases? Of course, the Democrats act like you're cutting somebody's leg off. It doesn't, if I'm reading it correctly, it doesn't take any money away from Medicare or Medicaid. It reduces planned increases down the road, but it doesn't remove any money technically, right?
That's correct. And what it does do is some of the cuts on the domestic or discretionary side are really going to go towards plussing up our military, which has really fallen in disarray in terms of both the Navy and Air Force in particular, and our ground troops. So I've got a son who serves and is a captain, active duty captain in the U.S. Army, and he'll tell you about the cuts that they've seen that have come down. So plussing up on the defense side of things is very, very important. And I think we'll write our own plan and budget. It's good to have that as a guideline as we move forward. I was also pleased to see what the president had to say about taking care of our veterans and increasing the amount of the budget that will go towards them. So what it really is a sense of priorities, cutting back at the EPA, cutting back at the Department of Education, cutting back at the State Department. What he just did going abroad and telling other countries, especially in Europe, pay your fair share, pay it. Don't look to us anymore.
And some of them have.
Yes.
Right? They've started to pay.
That's right. It's amazing what if you take the bully pulpit of the presidency of the United States and shine a bright light on it, what's a true leader is able to get done. Now they'll wince and they'll moan and they'll complain once he leaves, but I think we keep our superpower status pretty much intact.
I think that some of the frustration I hear from my audience, and certainly that I feel myself, and you and I are about the same age. I remember when Ronald Reagan wanted to build up the military, and I was so proud about that. And then we get to Congress, and they did give him more money for the military, but they didn't cut anything else. And when I look at that omnibus bill that just passed, there's more money for the military, but we didn't cut anything else. And I think that's the common sense you've got to get to in whatever this budget is. You've got to have decreases somewhere to offset more spending here, right?
Especially when we're staring at $20 trillion of debt.
Right.
I mean, not only is it not sustainable as an economy and given our GDP, but it's immoral. That's how I talk about it. To pass that on to our children and grandchildren is wrong. And we've got to start making a dent in that debt. And not only does that come with living within our means and spending decreases, but also in stimulating the economy, which is what the president's goal and agenda really is doing. We've seen that begun a lot right now in lifting a lot of these overburdensome rules and regulations that were passed over the last 8 years on steroids. I mean, the Obama administration spat them out one after another. But to lift that wet blanket off of business and industry, and I don't mean big business. I mean
mom and pop stuff. Sure.
Entrepreneurs that are just so pleased that they're getting a lifeline here. So that's a part of it, along with some of the tax reform that we're going to be engaging in, and then ultimately, the infrastructure and growth agenda that I think is going to get America back to work and will also help in terms of our long-term debt.
What's the pressure you feel with 2018 around the corner, knowing that if you guys I'm talking about Republicans, don't get something accomplished that the president campaigned on and promised he was going to do, healthcare, budget, military, whatever it is, and you have to go to the voters in 2018 and say, we tried, but even with the two majorities and the presidency, we couldn't get it done.
Well, I mean, that's unacceptable. It just is. We have got to make good and deliver on the promises that we've made to our constituents. We've got a majority in the House and the Senate. I understand on the Senate side we're not at that filibuster-proof 60 number, but there are a lot of things that we can get done, Mark. And I'm proud that in the House we were able to finally come to consensus in a health care plan that I think does bend that cost curve that gets us out of this death spiral that we're in, gets us back into the fiscal boat that we need to be in when it comes to healthcare and in the free market. So delivering on that is important. Passing them, as I said, some 100+ bills already across the board is good stuff. Lifting the regulatory burdens are all things that we have to deliver on, and we need to get it done by 2018.
I'm going to run out of time. Unfortunately, we're with Congresswoman Ann Wagner. Any thoughts on 2018? Are you giving any thoughts of a Senate race?
Well, you know what? We are taking a very close look at it. I won't be overly coy on things just now. I've got a job to do in Washington, D.C., and I've got to make good to my constituents here in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District, which is home to me. It's personal to me. It always has been. But I have to say, Claire McCaskill does not share Missouri values. She needs to be retired, and we're going to take a very, very close look at that race. And stay tuned.
Let us know. All right. That's Congresswoman Ann Wagner. It's great to see you.
Always good to be in the studio.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in to see us. We appreciate it. Awesome. All right. We got to get to a quick break here. 314-969-9797. Coming up in the next hour, Catherine Herridge, investigative reporter extraordinaire from the Fox News Channel, is going to join us, and we'll talk to Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft. Stick around.
Living on a lighted stage approaches the unreal.
This hour of the Mark Cox Show brought to you by Naputi Wellness, NaputiWellnessCenter.com.
Nobody knows what's going to happen next with the health care. In fact, we were just talking about what that might look like at one of these points. But if you've got a health care plan that you're paying an extraordinarily high premium for, and then you've got a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible on top of that, you don't really have health care because you can't use it. So call my friend Bill Pauly over at Healthcare Solutions Team. They're brokers. They work with some of the biggest insurance companies in the country. They can find a plan that's tailor-made for you. They love to work with people who are self-employed, who've been forced into these exchanges to find health care. Saved a friend of mine close to $600 a month in his premium. So they can help you as well. Why suffer with those high premiums for the rest of the year? Call them. You're dealing with local people. Bill and his crew operate right here in St. Louis. They're going to be able to help you out. It's the Healthcare Solutions Team, 314-304-6850. Again, 314-304-6850.